And I'm Miriam Parham, and I'm a member of this church, and I worked at the hospital as a registered dietitian and diabetes educator, and I've helped coordinate quite a few of these events, so I recognize a lot of you, and I'm so glad you're here. I hope you enjoyed the food, but now you have an amazing opportunity to hear a speaker who's not going to be available to do a lot of local speaking because he's going to go on a national circuit speaking and probably even international. He is the founder and president of PBLM, which is Plant-Based Lifestyle Movement, and I think I met him actually before that. He spoke at another event that I coordinate in Tampa Bay Veg Fest, which is a huge event. That's thousands of people, all plant-based, in November. But I met him there. Oh no, you came to another event I coordinated, and you came to speak at a Have a Heart event also that's a fundraiser for animals and the environment. So thank you. And then he invited me to join the board as a founding member of that PBLM group. So I've been here professionally in that organization, which is a sheer pleasure. And his wife is part of that team too, which is amazing. She's also another lifestyle medicine doctor, so it runs in the family. So he is the director of interventional cardiology at the James Haley VA Medical Center. He completed his cardiology and interventional cardiology training from Winthrop University Hospital in Mineola, New York in 2007. He's been working at the V.A.Hospital in Tampa since 2007 and has been affiliated with the University of South Florida, and I know speaking to a lot of the medical students, correct? Trying to help them understand a lot of the plant-based nutrition benefits to our health. He is the director of the critical care unit and the cardiac cath lab at the V.A.Hospital. He served as an assistant program director for General Cardiology Fellowship and has won many teaching awards. Dr. Reddy is on the executive board for the American College of Lifestyle Medicine as the national treasurer and has been invited to run for president. Dr. Reddy is a plant-based physician who believes in lifestyle intervention and disease prevention. He has established programs at the hospital that focus on disease prevention. And as I said, I've helped him and coordinated speaking engagements, and you're in for a treat. It'll only be about 25, 30 minutes, and hope you enjoy. And when you leave, you get to pick up some literature. And there's some plant-based milks you can try, including chocolate. And there's some cookbooks there. When you turn in your survey, you'll get the cookbook with all the recipes from today. So thank you so much for attending. And Dr. Reddy, please come forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Miriam, for the kind words of introduction. Can you guys all hear me nice and clear in the back? Nice. So pick up, okay, there you go. All right, thank you for the kind words of introduction, and thanks for the church leadership for inviting me. A little too late, 4 or 5 years, but I'm here because of COVID and what have you. But yes, I do speak a lot across the country, and I've given lectures now, even overseas. But one of my true areas of passion is to take the science of what I teach, take the science of what I practice to the communities. Where the reason behind that is when I go to these large medical meetings, professional medical meetings, especially in the space of lifestyle medicine, nutrition, I'm in the company of like-minded individuals, sharing a hotel space for 3-4 days somewhere out west or wherever the meeting is. And wow, and then it's very easy for me to kind of seek comfort. Oh wow, we are changing the world. But the reality though, I come back from the conference that Sunday night, and Monday morning I get in my car going from Trinity, Florida to downtown Tampa to work at the VA and the university, and in my route, just my drive, there are at least 45 fast food restaurants that I don't want to send any one of my patients to. So the question is, how do I change that? I can go to medical literature, medical meetings, and medical school, university, and give all kinds of lectures. But when rubber hits the road, who is taking this message to a general public? Who is taking the message to a police officer? Who's taking this message to the fire station? Who's taking this message to a church group? Who's taking this message to a public school? Right? And that space, nobody's taking that message. So I said, you know what? We need to do this. So that's why in 2018, we kind of met in 2018 and 2019, my wife and I, we founded a nonprofit to increase the public awareness of science of prevention, disease prevention, through nutrition and lifestyle. And that's what Miriam was alluding to, plant-based lifestyle movement. And as a part of that, and here I am. And I, like you heard, I work for the VA, and that's been my career job, and almost nearing 20 years there. And for those of you who are veterans or family members of a veteran, I want to start with saying a sincere thanks for the sacrifices you have and you continue to make. And I have no disclosures, a career public servant. I have no conflicts of interest. If I have any, they're almost always science and intellectual, which I guess we are all entitled to. So I want to start with what I call a reality check. And reality check as in my very presence on this stage on a Sunday afternoon. Because that's my stage, a cardiac cath lab. Right? That's where I trained, that's where I work, that's where I teach, that's where I practice. So it's unusual for the likes of me to step outside what I call the deep dungeons of a lead-shielded cardiac cath lab, come out on a weekend to meet the community and make a humble plea and say, folks, don't meet me there. Pretty much daring you to see if you can make a guy like me go jobless. That's the mission I am on. As to, while I'm doing that, I'm also still the guy who does those procedures wearing an apron, lead apron that has carrots on it. Okay, I'm also the crazy cardiologist who walks around with a scrub top that reads under my name that I have a carrot and a stent. You pick. Right? The origins of that line in itself is a presentation as to how I came up with that. So at the request of the VA at the national level, I actually did a TED Talk, which has now become what I call a 15-minute version of what has become, because that's the limit for the TED Talks, you can't go more than 15, 16 minutes. So that's I call it the 15-minute version of what has become my life's mission. So if you go to YouTube and just simply type carrot and stent, it's like a 15-minute version of literally what could be a 7-hour talk. But so I want to start with two questions. I changed this slide. It's a slightly older slide. I now actually ask 3 questions. Before I ask you, do you know anything about health and what's your why? The first question I ask is, what is my why? Why do I do this? Yes, I kind of told you, with the lens of, taking this to the community and all of that, but I'm also the guy who took an oath, right? Built into the medical oath is prevention. A lot of people, except for if you're a medical historian, a lot of people don't know this, that the concept of prevention as a foundation of medicine was built into the Hippocratic Oath only in 1969. Yeah, it's not that old. So that's my first question. I don't have it as a slide here. But the next question is, what does health mean to us? Let's be honest, when was the last time we actually sat down and had a sincere, deep contemplation? What does health actually mean to me? Most people don't do that. And I strongly urge you to do it and come up with an answer. But turns out the very word health has a definition. These are not my words. This definition was put forth by the World Health Organization when the organization was founded. And nothing has been changed since. That health is not just the mere absence of disease or infirmity, but it's the total presence of social, physical, and mental well-being. And one could go on to add even spiritual well-being, because for some of us, we seek health and a lot of valuable things in our lives through spiritual well-being. Right? And the next question, if I may ask one of you, just anybody randomly just answer this question, just so we get a feel for where I'm going to go with this. Why do you want to be healthy? Quality of life, live longer. All right? Right? So now imagine that instead of putting not even a second of an answer, if I were to ask you to go home and write an essay about it, right? I want you to write an essay about this question, take 2 weeks. We're going to publish it in a paper, right? And you were emotional, detailed, very, very thorough through it. And then I take that same paper and take it across continents, cultures, languages, religions, races. Do you think the answers are going to be any different? Then all of our answers falling into only 2 categories. No matter how lengthy, how emotional, how heartfelt they are, all those reasons will fall into what just the 2 or 3 voices I just heard. Quality of life. But for each one of us, quality of life may be different. Because for one of you, quality of life may be, hey, I just want to go walk the dog down the street without having to pop 3 nitro tablets. Or, I want to walk because just getting ready for an amputation because of diabetes that is preventable in close to 80% of us. For another person, quality of life may be, hey, I'm turning 65 before that 65th birthday, or on that 65th birthday, I want to run my first marathon. Right? For each one of us, that is different. Don't let somebody else define what your quality of life is. The next one is quantity of life. Right? Live a long life. And although I'm showing these two as 2 separate entities, you don't need me to tell you that they are inseparable. Nobody wants one at the expense of the other. We would like both of them to be fairly well balanced. And so for that reason, what I want to do is take this opportunity to probably spend the most time that I'm going to spend on any one of these slides today is look at quality of life plotted as a graph against the quantity of life. And to convey you about the message that I'm talking about, I want to take you 100 years ago. An average life expectancy in America 100 years ago was 45. Yep, 45 years old. And this is why I kind of cringe when people say good old days. Olden days were not good. Okay? Entire towns used to be wiped out for diseases that we don't even know exist anymore. Okay? And for those reasons and many reasons that we take for granted, a large sector of the population did not even have basic access to things that we take for granted. And for those reasons, the graph looked like a triangle. Short lives and the quality of life went down very rapidly. In 2023 into 2024, yes, we have made a tremendous progress. 77 is what I show on this slide, but unfortunately that number is actually going backwards for the past 5 years. We are one of very few nations in the world that has been reporting decline in life expectancy at birth for the past 5 years. And that is primarily due to nothing to do with nutrition, nothing to do with obesity. It is primarily due to opioid addiction. It's so bad that life expectancy at birth has been going backwards for the past 5 years, one of only 3 countries in the world. And yes, we are living much longer compared to 1920, but unfortunately for various reasons, which I'm going to show in a second, our life's curve right now looks like that bizarre convoluted shape down the slope of which we are beginning to accumulate risk factors at a very early age. So now, why would I say risk factors and disease and start with diet? Because diet-induced risk is now officially the leading contributor to disease, disability, and death. More people suffer from a dietary choice that we are making than motor vehicle accidents, alcohol, and tobacco combined. As Dr. Joel Furman said in one of his books, I believe it's Eat to Live, we are digging our graves with knives and forks. Okay? So obesity is on the rise, diabetes and male sexual dysfunction, hypertension and high cholesterol numbers. 65% of the population that we know of has these conditions, hypertension and high cholesterol. Heart disease continues to be the leading cause of death, a stroke or 2, and congestive heart failure. Yes, we are living longer, but we are also dying longer. While living on an average up to 77, 78 years, most of us are losing close to 23.6 years due to lack of quality. We see it around us, we see it in our families, we see it with our neighbors. I, as a physician working in the intensive care and the cardiac cath lab, I see this on a daily basis. Right? What I argue is that given the luxury that we have, that we no longer die in mass numbers due to infection and famine, those two being the leading killers of humanity for as long as we existed, we have a fairly decent control on those two. Even in the era of a disastrous global pandemic, we still have a decent control. Can we at least make an attempt where we live our lives in such a way that the quality of life is maintained at a very high level, like the green line that just popped. And then when the time comes, I picked 100, we drop. I call this concept the concept of living long but dying short. Living long but die short. But now from a triangle, see the graph, the entire graph looks like a box, a rectangle. Social anthropology scientists call this concept the rectangularization of life. Meaning when the life's graph is drawn using the two most important reasons why any one of us want to be healthy, the graph should look like a rectangle. I simply call it life in a box because no matter how hard I try, sooner or later I will end up in a box. I just don't want it to be my fault. Right? When I say my fault, I want to introduce to the concept of the very word healthy being broken apart into heal thyself. Okay? But unfortunately, when it comes to when I say my fault, I'm not saying those words with the intent of shaming somebody or shifting the blame onto a society or an individual, but approaching health with a sense of personal responsibility. But as saddening as this sentence is, this is still true from 1975, written in Chicago Tribune, that the idea of preventive medicine is faintly un-American. It means first recognizing that the enemy is us. All right? Now, because of that degree of disconnect of healing oneself, we have now become a society where majority of the focus is on disease management, not health promotion. Right? Adding a fifth medication and an injectable to keep your blood pressure, as fascinating as the technology, as evidence-based as the science is, and as supporting as I am of some of those therapies, that's not health promotion. Skillfully adding a fourth layer of metal into your coronary arteries that I do for a living is not health promotion, it is disease management, because these diseases are preventable in close to 70 to 80% of the human race. So much so, I now challenge myself and my medical community if the letters MD next to my name merely mean manager of disease, because we seldom get involved in health promotion. Right? And again, as a consequence of that, we have now become a society where 6 in 10 of us have at least one common chronic preventable disease. 4 in 10 of us have at least 2 common chronic preventable diseases. And these are not some rare zebras and genetic conditions. These are common heart disease, cancer, chronic lung disease, stroke, memory loss, diabetes, and kidney disease. Every single one of us in this room, right, either are currently suffering from one of these, if not, we have some of the closest to people in our innermost circle is battling or already lost a battle to one of, if not many of these diseases. Right? True statement, right? Anybody, right? So now, just to show in terms of losing those battles, let's pick the year 2020. The reason I picked 2020 is that's when we walked into this global disaster of a pandemic. It turns out, and also would you believe me if I told you, in the midst of it, in the beginning, not even the middle, in the beginning of a catastrophic global pandemic, twice as many people died due to heart disease than pandemic, COVID, while heart disease is preventable. Same thing happened in 21, same thing happened in 22, 23 data should be coming out soon. But the heart disease related deaths used to be a lot worse. Lot worse if you go to the 1960s and 1950s, it used to be almost double if not triple the rates. The reason that we have been able to bending those curves, bringing down heart disease related deaths in America is not because of the pills that I use, it's not because of the procedures I do. Majority of it is due to a single public health policy. A bold single public health policy that in itself can be an entire hour's worth of talk is under Kennedy administration, the Surgeon General, Dr. Terry, Luther Terry, telling America that tobacco is bad for you. And we're still seeing the benefits of that one singular public health policy. But unfortunately, despite all of our efforts, starting around 2010, 2011, despite all the advances in medicine, heart disease rates, we haven't, see the lines completely flattened out. We are not bringing them. If anything, These numbers are going up. When I came to America, this is the heat map. This is 2022. 2024 just came out. It looks little different because there is no green state. Every single state has obesity rates more than 25 to 30%. When I came to America in 95, there was not a single state in the union where the obesity rate was more than 20%. Today, there is not a single state in America where the obesity rate is less than 25 to 30%. Our genetics did not change in such a short period. The food environment changed quite a bit. And as a consequence of this, what's happening now is that the biggest killer is making a deadly comeback, where younger people, women, non-smokers are falling victim to a disease that is preventable. To showcase this and to outline this, Wall Street Journal in 2019 wrote an article profiling the life and the premature death of a young man, Mr. Washington. Right? And now, this is a kind of a medical slide, but I want to walk you through this. What this shows you here is that amongst American public who have known heart disease, these are people who have established heart disease. How are we doing as a country? How are they, it turns out that only 50% of them diabetes is well controlled. These are people with known heart disease, the highest risk. Blood pressure is controlled only in 50% of people. Cholesterols are not controlled in 70% of people. Okay? Weight is not controlled in close to 80% of people. 22% of people with known heart disease are still smoking. Okay? In terms of exercise, 80% of people with known heart disease are not even meeting the bare minimum exercise recommendations by the American Heart Association, used to walk for 150 minutes a week. Now, here is the shocker. While diet-induced risk is a leading contributor to that disease, only 1% of people are meeting the bare minimum American Heart Association's healthy diet requirements. So appropriately so, the editorial that went with this medical paper called it, "We are literally living through a population-level code blue." Right? So now, if the same trend continues, I'm going to quickly go through these slides. If the same trend continues, it is predicted that by 2060, almost all cardiovascular risk factors and the related disease, such as strokes, heart attacks, and congestive heart failure, will go up by anywhere between 22 to 30%. Now imagine in America in 2060, not too far out, it's, that a stroke rate of 30% higher than where we are today. Congestive heart failure of 30% more than where we are today. So while this is happening, how engaged are we? How much are we making a sincere effort? So I picked the year 2019 and looked into what did America search in 2019, because back then there was no pandemic. Does anybody see heart disease there? So some of you know who this guy is. Right? Who knows this man? There you go. So Mike is saying, nobody Googled how not to die from heart disease. Right? So while I come across like I'm kind of blaming the society or the healthcare system, how about my own community, the community of cardiovascular specialists? So 930 of us were surveyed, and 90% said we got absolutely no training in nutrition, which is true. So, and in this survey, we asked a total of 4 questions. The second question was, yes, we know that you don't get any training in nutrition, but being the cardiology professional that you are, do you think nutrition is important? Close to 80% said, yes, nutrition is important. How important is it? Do you think it is your responsibility to teach nutrition to your patients and your family? Close to 70% said, yes. So far, so good. But when the rubber hits the road, don't you want to be the change that you want to bring to the world? Would you want to go see a cardiologist who lights up after you leave, but tells you don't smoke? Right? If I'm telling my patients to eat healthy, shouldn't I be eating at least according to not some utopian perfect way of eating, but at least meeting the dietary guidelines that I'm telling my patients to practice, right? Turns out less than 30% of cardiologists to follow their own dietary guidelines. So trust me, there is enough blame to go around. So we are not being the change that we want to bring to the world, and hence the leading cause of death amongst American cardiologists continues to be heart disease. So this is where I felt an urgent need. So I worked with Dr. Esselstyn and Andrew. So we wrote a paper in 2018 about how to incorporate this into the very, very culture of medicine, to change the paradigm. And then I wrote two or three subsequent papers. But when I say an urgent need, this is what I mean, is we need to start prevention early. All the 6 pillars of lifestyle medicine, young children prioritizing physical activity, young children being taught how to make a meal. If I can have it my way, I would mandate in every American public school a class on cooking a healthy meal. It's a life skill, right? But here is the proof. I want you to kind of pay attention, draw your attention to that red box that just popped up. Amongst American youth ages 12 to 19, when you do surveys and see what percentage of American youth 12 to 19 are eating a healthy diet, the signal is reported as a 0.0%. It's not a typo. It looked like that for 22 years. The only time it changed a little bit and went up to 0.3% is when Michelle Obama was trying to do that school garden program, teaching like every school should have a garden and teach. But unfortunately, that too became political. And this is the window. We have to start at age 3, at age 4, at age 5, teaching the importance of exercise, sleep, social connections, the importance of family, importance of community, and the importance of learning how to cook a meal for yourself, proper meal. And then when people ask me how early is too early, so I thought about it, and I ended up coming up with some nice catchphrases of a lines. So I came up with this. I say prevention should start from womb to tomb, or from lust to dust. It's never too early, it's never too late, because what a mother eats while she's carrying a child has a bearing on 2 generations, especially if the child that's being carried is a female child. And we know that fairly well. Right? And if we don't do that, if we don't focus on cardiovascular risk factor prevention amongst our youth, right? For those of you who are veterans, you probably know this. This is now, and a guy who works for the VA system, this is one of the biggest national security threats right now. 70 to 80% of 18-year-old men and women are failing ROTC physicals. DOD actually officially released a bulletin on this, saying that this is a national security threat. That lack of physical fitness and obesity amongst the youth, and they cannot even qualify the bare minimum physical activity challenge that an ROTC officer wants you to do. And my public school's ROTC officer is a friend of mine. He tells me the same thing. And as a consequence of this, we are paying a price. In addition to lives lost and suffering, we are paying a huge amount in dollar bills. Right? And where is the most of the money going? It's going into disease management. The doctors who are trained, and these are not the salaries at the VA, so don't look at this and say, Dr. Reddy makes this kind of money, okay? So the doctors who are actually trained to keep us healthy, our public health officials, our primary care doctors, our internal medicine doctors, they are literally at the bottom of the food chain when it comes to salaries in medicine. Okay, and here is one such example. Smoking cessation counseling pays us doctors 45-fold, not 45%, 45 times fewer dollars than putting a stent in your heart. So, and that's what I mean, that we have an upside down pyramid. We have to flip this pyramid where the system, which is all of us, cares for health. But to flip this system, right? Every one of us have an upside down pyramid inside of us. Nobody's perfect. So the way to change the healthcare system is to change our behavior first around health. And when we do that, right, it takes 5 to make a fist. It takes a drop and a drop and a drop to make an ocean. And talking about taking 5 to make a fist, boy, do we need a lot of fists to flip that pyramid back on its face. So the question is, how do we do that? So the things that I offer through the pillar, or what I call the pillars of lifestyle medicine. If you take a look at that picture, maybe having to pay for a pair of sneakers and healthy food, right? Everything else is kind of free. And some of us could actually use the money from tobacco and alcohol to pay for healthy food. Balance us out. So it's nothing. I don't have some package or a gym membership or my CD programs to sell you. But as a part of this, we are also promoting this organization called the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, which is now officially the fastest growing medical organization in the world. And for those of you who are in healthcare, there is an essentials bundle. You can just go to Google this. This is a free offering through the college, supported by the White House. It's a 5-6 hours of CME. And there's no regular price. You see a regular price, but this is a free event that we are promoting. But to do any of this, we have to be mindful. You have to be acutely mindful. And the question is, mindful about what? Mindful about one simple thing. The answer that you gave us, or you would give to yourselves when you ask, why do you want to be healthy? You have an answer. And you just have to be mindful. Don't have to be perfect about it. Every time you pick up that bottle of soda, think about it. Hey, I want to be around for my child to graduate. I'm already on insulin. Mindfulness. Every time you eat an extra box of pizza and your doctor is adding a second blood pressure medication, hey, I want to be around for that daughter to walk down the aisle. I don't want to be in the wheelchair at a nursing home. Mindfulness. Right? That's how it works. That's how literally it works. It's just not going to happen because, some crazy cardiologist came to your church and lectured on a Saturday afternoon or Sunday afternoon. Right? But at the same time, mindfulness is not something that you can, like a pair of coat, you just walk in and walk out of. You have to make an effort toward it. It's a slow process. For example, some of you might have never tasted the food that you ate today. But oh wow, I can eat like this, it tastes good and I can be healthy. Beginner's mind. Right? And don't be judgmental about it. And then take time to practice the skills and implement them into your life. And in doing so, there are going to be successes. Celebrate them. Put them on Facebook. Share with your family. But nobody ever puts a negative story on Facebook, right? Everything is beautiful on Facebook. But the reality is not like so. If you fail, share it with your friends and family because we will learn from your mistakes or vice versa. And then please don't make this a competition. Especially healthy living is not a competition about weight loss. You can lose weight God knows how many different ways. Okay? It's not like somebody said, I really like this, I can't recall who said this. Life, the last time they checked, life is not a contest about fitting in a thinner casket. Right? So trust the message, and then if everything fails, let go and start again. Another way of looking at this is some person went through difficulties and climbed the mountain of health, but now they want to do us a favor. Guys, don't struggle. We figured out this path. Here, we're going to give you a ladder. Heck, we're going to give you 2 ladders. Pick one. That's all it is. As long as you're mindful. Chip one little thing at a time. I'm going to walk extra 5 minutes today. I'm going to cut down that salt a little bit tomorrow. I'm going to not stop eating too much red meat for the next month and see what happens. Your insulin requirement goes down. Your sugars get better. Your doctor is taking you off of blood pressure pills. Then you decide where you want to go with it. Right? That's how it works. So is there science behind it? And the answer is yes. The first and the foremost is social relationships, because health is not going to happen unless we are psychologically and socially strong. It's just not going to happen. Right? And that's why I like this quote, an ancient quote that whosoever is delighted in solitude is either a wild beast or a god. Right? Because what happens is when we come together as communities, we have that sense of being cared for. We have that sense of being loved. And out of that comes a sense of self-esteem and then a network of mutual obligations. And people who live their lives with a network of mutual obligations tend to do a bunch of things right. And then that translates into health. And we know this from communities across the world who live to be 100 years old and live healthy. And Seventh-day Adventist community being one of them. But unfortunately, social isolation is a disaster in this country even before the pandemic. Pandemic made it even worse. So the National Academy of Sciences released a document that men and women who are older than 65, but they're feeling a life lived in isolation, that one component of their life alone significantly increases the risk of stroke and heart attack to the tune of being equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Okay? I'm going to skip through some of this, but in terms of, people who have poor social connections tend to have poor lifestyle choices, huge psychological burden. As a consequence of this, compliance with medications, compliance with healthy habits, compliance with following with doctors, everything goes back. Next thing you know, your cholesterol numbers are going up, your blood pressure is going up, and then you have an event or two, and then people pass away. And this is, I already kind of talked about this. I'm going to skip through this. And tobacco, right? Fortunately, not many people are smoking, but we live in a country where these kind of advertisements were published in medical journals at times. And the slogan is not mine. Smoking, doctor's choice is America's choice was a tobacco industry slogan. And I use this in today's world. What do I mean by doctor's choice is because we also live in a country where, including the hospital next door, I am told, I don't know if it is true, that we allow the sale of a food that we tell through our guidelines not to eat being sold in a hospital. Right? So if we do that, I ask a very simple question. If I am allowing as a part of the system for the burgers to be sold on the same floor where I'm doing balloon angioplasties and bypass operations. So I call this balloons, burgers, and bypass on the same floor. So since I'm a part of the system, if I allow this to happen, do I have the moral authority? Look in the eye of a man who did not lose his life in the jungles of Vietnam, but he's now losing his life under my roof. Do I have the moral authority to look him in the eye and say, sir, eat healthy? Right? Same thing with alcohol. If you drink empty bottles of red wine for 25 other reasons, friends, family, ball games, festivities, but please, don't empty bottles of red wine thinking that it's good for you. It's never been good for you, it's never been, the science was, but at least now finally we are having very high quality science showing us that there's absolutely no safe limit to alcohol, to a point that the World Heart Federation changed their guideline last year. The American Heart Association, the American College of Cardiology, hopefully they will change their position too soon. Stress, right? We all have it. It's just a matter of how much we allow it to manifest as a physical medical condition. But what we also know, at least from a heart disease, diabetes, and almost most of the common chronic diseases, for every disease or risk factor that you have, if you add stress on top of it, meaning that I'm a diabetic but living a nice, comfortable life, somebody is cooking for me, I have a beautiful job, as opposed to a single mother who works 3 night shifts and is struggling between mortgage, car payment, and child care. But she is also diabetic. Just imagine that stress. Completely different animal in terms of disease manifestation. So, and we know this from objective studying of people from across the world. This paper is from 159 countries in the world, and it's the same. And only now we're kind of beginning to actually map it in terms of imaging and where the stress is. I'm going to kind of quickly go through some of this and get to. So I wrote a book chapter on this about stress and cardiovascular disease. And in terms of physical activity, turns out most people are not even meeting the bare minimum. That's why when people ask me to say, you know what, I doubled the duration. I said, I want you to do 300 minutes of cardio or some type of exercise with the hope that the people may come back and say, I did 150. Okay, but if I say 150, people may not even do 100. Right? And exercise is phenomenal, meaning that it's literally is medicine. And that's why just anything that you can move, keep moving. Body in motion stays in motion. Especially now with all these wearables, you could kind of almost like an accountability partner, if you will. So keep your activity. At least go for a 30-minute walk 5 days a week, 2 to 3 days a week. Build in some strength training. Loss of muscle mass is a disaster. Please lift heavy things. Get a trainer to learn how to do it properly. If you're a diabetic, it actually helps with your body's insulin or glucose utilization. And heart rate, exercise, psychological benefits or irregular heart-related benefits, prevents blood clotting, prevents plaque formation, helps your blood pressure in so many different ways. And that's why we tell people, just keep moving, take elevator, don't take elevators, take steps. Even when you go to Publix, park at the farther end. So at the end of the day, you clock in all of these things. The next thing is sleep. Nobody said it better than Gandhi himself, that each night when I go to sleep, I die. And the next morning when I wake up, I am reborn. So don't negotiate with sleep. It's easier said than done, but simple tricks with sleep is you got to get in at least 7 to 8 hours of sleep. To get 7 to 8 hours of sleep, you got to be in bed for at least 9 hours. Yeah, so to do that, you have to follow some very, very strict rules. 10 o'clock at night, even if I'm not sleepy, I'm going to retire to bed. And next thing you know, after 2 to 3 months of trial, you are falling asleep at 10 o'clock. And when you wake up, you are fresh. Okay? And so that's why sleep is now officially included into one of the life's pillars by the American Heart Association. What used to be life's simple 7, now sleep got added to it, and now we call it life's essential 8. Right? And you can do this. You can go to Google and check something called as My Life's Check. The last time when I was doing this, I was happy to report that I was driving my Tesla. I was driving my life. That was my score, 97.5. I was driving my life better than I was driving my Tesla. Okay? I got 97.5 because I always say I don't eat fish, and they ding me some points for that. But in terms of sleep, go to bed at a consistent time. No, keep the bedroom quiet and dark. Dark as in you should not be able to see your own palm if it is 5 inches from your eyes. That's what dark is. That's how dark your bedroom should be. No electronic devices, easier said than done, but try. No television, and no large meals, no caffeine, no alcohol for at least 4 to 6 hours before bedtime. And that's a great website. You try to check that. Now the big one, the nutrition. Right? So far, nobody argues with that. Does anybody argue about? No, there's no argument about sleep. There's no argument about exercise. There's no argument about social. But the minute we talk about nutrition, boy, do the swords come out. Because everybody eats, everybody cooks, everybody has a cultural preference, everybody has grandma's recipes nobody wants to give up. Do you all think it was easy for me to give up my mom's Indian chicken curry and become a vegetarian? No. And she still thinks that I'm crazy. But this is what I said a few years ago. While the keto and phyto are fighting the battle, the Cheeto is winning the war. As in, there's this huge societal battle about plant-based versus meat-based, plant-based versus meat-based. But the reality is most people are either healthy or sick, not because they're between. Most people are eating junk. Most people are eating a crap. Crap as in calorie-rich and processed. So here is the proof. Why does a cardiologist even need to talk about nutrition? Is that if you look at the most recent data, the leading contributor to heart disease is plaque buildup in our heart arteries. And what is causing all of that is behavioral risk. The next question you ask is behavior around what? Is around our dietary behaviors. That's why as a cardiologist should talk about diet. Now, when I talk about diet, be honest with me. When was the last time any one of you on your way home stopped by Publix, called home and said, honey, should I bring 8 carbohydrates, 9 fats, and 6 proteins to make dinner? Does anybody think like that? Does anybody shop like that? Has anybody ever seen a fat aisle and a protein aisle? No. But the minute we go on a diet plan, everybody's counting carbohydrates. Everybody's going crazy. Where is my protein? Where is my protein? Eat food, not too much, mostly plants. Michael Pollan works, right? So the key is don't eat stuff like that for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, right? I guess you could eat like that and still maintain your caloric budget and still be okay. But most people who eat like that for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, trust me, they're overeating because that's what they're calorically dense, highly palatable foods. When was the last time you opened up a bag of chips and ate only 2 and stopped? That's what I mean. Highly palatable, addictive, calorically dense foods. Just because something is processed doesn't mean it's bad for you. That's another whole discussion. Blood pressure. Everybody here, except for maybe 1 or 2 people, everybody here, I'm willing to bet, is taking a blood pressure medication. Who is not taking a blood pressure medication? Maybe I have a selection bias here. A lot of people are plant-based diet people, right? That's probably why. And here is the proof, is that DASH diet, a healthy plant-based diet with low salt, drops your blood pressure by up to 20 points within 30 days of taking it. Right? Same thing with cholesterol, right? Here, same thing with cholesterol, right? Healthy diet. Why take a cholesterol medication after a heart attack, which you have to, of course, there's the science on that is very clear, but at the same time, eat too much saturated fat in your diet. And here is diabetes talk. In people at risk for diabetes, lifestyle that is centered around exercise and a plant-predominant diet lowers the risk of you becoming a diabetic by 58% in the US population, close to 39-40% in the Chinese population, 34% in Finland. A similar study is now actually taking place in India. So that's why the guidelines, at least the AACE guidelines, tell you to eat a plant-predominant diet. Here's a good book I want you guys to read if you're a diabetic, a family member. This is a very, very well-written book for non-medical people. Extremely well-written book. We're going to skip through this. That's why this plant-based diet is not some vegan cardiologist trying to indoctrinate you with his ideology around eating. A plant-predominant diet is supported by every single medical guidelines. The American Heart Association, the American College of Cardiology, and the European Society of Cardiology tells you a healthy diet is the cornerstone of cardiovascular prevention. And that healthy diet could be a plant-predominant Mediterranean diet, right? Replacing saturated fat with mono and polyunsaturated fat, lower the salt content of your diet, and eat more fiber that includes whole grains, fruits, vegetables, pulses, and nuts. So this is not some agenda-driven programming of people. This is where the medical guidelines are, but most people are not practicing it. So just because I say something is plant-based, it doesn't mean everything is healthy. Just because it's plant-based, you got to be very careful with it. So, and we know this from at least 2 large papers, one of them being from the VA. The healthfulness of a plant-based diet has a direct relation on major chronic diseases, cardiovascular disease, cancer, diabetes, and equally applicable in both of the two large race denominations in the country. And same thing was detected amongst South Asians. Exact same thing, just because a lot of Indian people say, where I come from. Or we eat vegetarian, but if you look at Indian vegetarianism, it's a very unhealthy vegetarian food, right? So when I say I am a plant-based eater, most of my colleagues think that I eat like that, right? So I joke around saying that this picture is from the IJSV, International Journal of Shaming Vegans, right? There is no such a thing, it's just a joke, but the reality though, look at these foods. These are not expensive foods. Dialysis is expensive, stroke is expensive, heart attack is expensive, okay? Beans and lentils are not expensive, okay? So using these foods, here are my plates of food. This is my food, okay? So, and this is the plate from the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. So I'm going to skip through the controversies about protein and food. We're going to skip through some of the important concepts I want to talk about here. So this is a book that I want you, this is a free download by the American Association of Black Cardiologists, ABC Cardio. It's a free download. I give it to every African American patient, family members, and friends I have, and their family members, and I give it to them. I say, guys, just use this, go home and eat this way for 2 months and see what happens to your blood pressure and diabetes. And excellent resource. And let me skip through this. So now, at the end of all of this, Doc, I hear everything that you're saying, but the damn disease runs in my family. Nothing is going to cure this. It's just generation after generation. So look at these words. There are no old men in my family. All branches of my family tree have been cut short by cardiovascular disease. I believe the people in this room have the power and even the duty to change that. Words spoken by Dr. Warner, the president of American Heart Association, a day before suffering a massive heart attack while attending 2017's American Heart Association's national meeting. Cardiac arrest on the floor of the meeting, had to be airlifted and got 2 stents at age 47. Now the question then is this all genetic? Is this all genetic and there's nothing we can do? Is our destiny in DNA or is it in the dinner? I tend to say it's in the dinner. And I tell you, that's why I actually have an entire talk titled Dinner, Stupid, Not DNA. Okay? And here is one of the proofs. Dinner as in not just dinner, but dinner as in the totality of lifestyle. And here is one of the important papers. So here, there are 3 large genetic databases. What you see in the red are people with a high genetic risk. Those people with high genetic risk, if they lived a healthy lifestyle, even in the setting of a high genetic risk, the risk of actually having an event of a stroke and a heart attack can be lowered by up to 60%. Right? You have seen this, I think Dr. Esselstyn or somebody said this. Look at genes as a gun pointed to your head. It only matters when you pull the trigger. Right? So, and here's another beautiful paper from the VA database. If you have high genetic risk, but if you live Sleep was not even factored here. But if you live a healthy lifestyle, even when the genes are telling you that you are a high-risk person, you can spend extra 20 years without having an event of stroke or heart attack. Okay? That's the power of healthy living, and hence there are papers written with these titles. Healthy living is the best form of revenge, because any chronic disease can be lowered by 78%, diabetes by 93%, heart attacks by 81%, stroke by 50%, and cancer by 36%. That's the power. And then I use this line. Do you all remember when, this is even before Obama was running, when he introduced John Kerry at the DNC, that famous speech that there is no white America, black America, or Hispanic America, there is the United States of America. Does anybody remember that speech? That's what catapulted him to who he ended up becoming, that once kind of obscure speech at the DNC. I use that line and say, I'm sorry, President Obama, but there are actually 3 Americas when it comes to health. Remember earlier I showed you the heat map of America where obesity rates? Now if you look at the same heat map of America as per race, this is all of us. This is non-Hispanic, this is Hispanic adults, and this is African American adults. All right? And this is happening. This is the most recent data. And as to why that's happening is what I call the moral determinants of health, which is most hospitals and physicians like myself have now become nothing but offices of repair shops trying to correct health consequences that are predominantly socially determined. Right? And what I mean by that is conditions of our birth, conditions of our early childhood, conditions of our education, conditions of our work, social circumstances of our elders. Imagine of all the talk that I do, imagine that my parents and my wife's parents are elderly, have memory deficiency, and physically dependent on the 2 of us while we're trying to juggle 2 physician jobs, 3 children, and 4 sets of elderly parents. Do you think I'll be able to wake up in the morning and have time for Brussels sprouts and broccoli and sweet potato for breakfast? No. Life would be very different. I will be eating Pop-Tarts on out of window McDonald's breakfast while I'm driving to some nursing home before I go to work. And that has a direct consequence on my health. But we don't take that into account and come across judgmental with people. And community resiliency. How supportive is my community for my needs when I need them? And social fairness. And here is an example. If you take a train from Midtown Manhattan, which is one of the affluent places in the world, go all the way to Bronx, for every 10 minutes that you spend on the train ride, the average life expectancy goes down by 6 months. So, to do this, all these things, those 6 pillars up top, in the top circle, the bottom, all this community health, social support, all these pillars that I talked about, unless they happen within what I call the tightly wound confines of psychological health and social health, there is no health. If we are not psychologically healthy, if we are not socially healthy, it's not going to happen. That's how intricately they are connected. And that's why we as in my side of the community, in the healthcare community, these wheels of prevention, I call them. We need to spin these wheels of prevention as if it is our last ride. Because from a health perspective, we are ready to fall off the cliff. And nothing else is sustainable. Prevention, prevention, prevention all the way through. But when this gentleman, Dr. Braunwald, who is one of the living legends, he's one of those people in cardiology, we worship the land that he walks on type of scientist. So he was recently asked in an interview, what are the biggest research gaps in cardiology to improve care? He said, the living legend said, I think the most important thing is that we get rid of cardiologists. What do I mean by this is the next challenge is prevention, prevention, and prevention. Exact words. So, but to do this, to regain the momentum towards health, to flipping that pyramid, the health needs to happen. Every physician, every public health policy, and every individual needs to take action at a personal level, at a clinical level, and at a community level. Otherwise, it's just not going to happen. So that's my last slide, and that's our nonprofit that I do a lot of this work through. But thanks again. And I know I kind of went over the time, but if you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer. Yes, ma'am.
How many plant-based doctors are available, say, in the Zephyrhills area?
There's a website that you can look it up. You can just go to plant-based physicians. There is a list that you can look. I don't know off the top of my head because I don't practice here, but the community is growing. Yeah, and I don't look at necessarily all of this as a plant-based doctors only. I look at more of a doctors who are giving you a very comprehensive plan through a healthy lifestyle, right? Meaning that I could eat the healthiest way, but I am not exercising. I have severe sleep-related disorders, and I am stressed out all the time and very angry and hostile. It's not going to work. So plant-based diet is an extremely important component of health, but a comprehensive plan is what actually works, is that where you chip at all those things. But in terms of your question, there are websites. You can just go to Google, plant-based physicians in your community. You can put a zip code and it gives you a list of doctors and dietitians and other professionals within the healthcare system. And then we are building such a list through the American College of Lifestyle Medicine also. Yeah, there is which is officially a very fastly growing medical organization. Yes, sir. Are
you trying through the medical schools?
Yes. Yeah, so very good question. For those of you who haven't heard in the back, the question was, are you guys doing anything through the medical schools? Yes. So through the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, we are on a mission to make sure in the next few years that every medical school in the country has a lifestyle medicine interest group. We actually built a lifestyle medicine core curriculum that every medical residency program can download for a very nominal fee. They don't have to work hard on building it. We built it for them through ACLM, and that's available, yes. And very recently, the American College of Lifestyle Medicine got a delegate at the American Medical Association, which is a big deal.
If you look at it as 100%, what percent of that 100% are you trying to get to?
In terms of the medical schools?
Yeah, like your curriculum,
Oh yeah, so the way to do this is there are multiple ways of doing it, is that, we're trying to get it not as our ultimate goal is to actually have a completely separate training track as a specialty. But right now we are incorporating that into X number of hours, 30 to 40 hours during their 3 years of residency training. So that's a start. That's a start compared to where we are. But our ultimate goal is to actually have a complete fellowship and a residency curriculum. So, and a lot of this can be done. You don't even have to completely do a 3-4 year training on lifestyle medicine. You can incorporate into what you're doing. Like I did, I'm a cardiologist, I still do, like I showed you, I'm still the guy doing stenting and complex procedures, but every encounter you bring up this discussion with patients, friends, family, and colleagues, and then in doing so, we do our part in kind of changing the paradigm a little bit. And it becomes a new normal because everybody is talking the same language, not based on emotion, but truly based on evidence and science and that kind of stuff. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am. It's not necessarily a holistic medicine. It's kind of a lifestyle. That's the official language that we use, called lifestyle medicine. But yeah, holistic. All these concepts, as long as there is clinical evidence in terms of outcomes, right? For example, when I tell people to take a medication, right? I'm very mindful that my decision, my language towards a fellow human being, their life depends on what I say. Agree? So same thing with lifestyle medicine. That's why every single pillar that I talked about has the highest order of medical evidence, like everything that we do in medicine. So what we are doing is to promote this not as oh my God, we did this in India 1,000 years ago, so everybody has to do this. Egyptians did. No, where are we with this in today's science? When I say sleep, you can look at sleep and say, yeah, that's a part of holistic life. Absolutely, I agree. But the reason behind lifestyle medicine is because it is medicine. Sleep is medicine. Exercise is medicine. Food is medicine. Right? Social relations are medicine. Psychological well-being is medicine. And is it a part of a holistic life? Absolutely, yes. Yes, ma'am.
Previously,
Yeah, well, okay, a cardiology question. So for those of you who haven't heard in the back about taking an aspirin per day, yes, so a lot of confusion, it's interesting. So in the past, there used to be a time, if you're 50 years or older, take aspirin for the rest of your life. So what we found out that, and also, yeah, but that's one way of how we did this. Another way we did it is, what is your risk? You never had an event, but you're a diabetic, you have XYZ risk factors, your family history, your cholesterol is, so we plug numbers into an equation, the equation spits out a risk. Based on that risk, we used to give aspirin to prevent a future event. You never had one. So when we do that, we call that primary prevention, meaning that we are trying to prevent the primary event. So what we know now, except for very, very few cases, most people don't need to take aspirin. And what we found out is that yes, aspirin does help even in those patients, but when taken over a long period of time, the risk of bleeding outweighs the risk of benefit. And when that data came out and was duplicated, triplicated, and now almost 4 or 5 large patients, now we stopped routinely using aspirin for everybody. But if you have already had an event, that's what led to a lot of confusion. People with stents, people with 2 strokes, people with prior heart attacks stop taking aspirin because, I heard on CNN aspirin is no longer needed. So that's the only population where we changed our practice. But if you have had events in the past, please do not stop your aspirin without talking to your doctor who knows your health history better than I do. I think Miriam is saying that time up. One last question? Yes, sir. Yeah, so again, the question is, how does bacon fit into your diet? Great question, because, let's face it, I don't eat bacon. I've never eaten bacon. I've open disclosure, I've never eaten red meat in my life. Okay? Back in the day, I used to eat some chicken and fish, but how does it fit into your life? In the sense that depends on where your health spectrum is. Am I going to say here and say no human being should ever eat a piece of bacon? Yeah, that would be nice for the planet and the people, but when the reality of it. So it's also in the dose, based on your risk factors and your wishes, short-term and long-term health wishes. You want to stop eating bacon, stop eating red meat for about a few weeks and see what happens. But there is, although the risk is not equal, I'm sure you have seen this, seen these videos where people are tossing cigarettes on a saucepan and saying that that's what you're doing when you do that with bacon. Let's be honest, the risk is there. All processed meats are now officially listed as a class 1 carcinogens, meaning that we know that there's enough science to say that they are the direct cause. That being said, you also have to ask, what is the risk? What is the dose? How much do I have to eat? For how long do I have to eat? That's why I'm saying, is bacon good for me? Then I say, compared to what? That's when people ask me, hey, is X good for me? I said, compared to what? Because you're making a choice there. So yeah, I just don't have the data to say, yeah. So the best way to do this is assess your risk, cut down some bacon consumption, red meat or processed meats, and see what happens. Yes, ma'am.
That begs the question of plant-based processed food.
And that's why I had slides, right? So just because something is plant-based, and also this thing about every processed food doesn't mean that it's bad for you. Without processing food, we cannot feed 9 billion people on the planet. But the way to look at food is, are foods calorie rich, right? Are calorie rich and highly palatable. Like I said, the things that we just eat and just can't stop eating because of the addiction potential of the food, which are mostly because of 3 things. They're high in salt, high in sugar, and high in fat. And in doing so, they're high in calories. So yeah, just because something is plant-based, it's not everything is good. You got to be very careful with that. Yeah, some of the plant-based foods have a lot of salt and that kind of stuff. That's why the best learning is cook like the meals that you are fed today. Right? Home cooking works really well. All right, so in the interest of time, if anybody I'm on social media, shoot us an email, and I'll be more than happy to, kind of talk to you guys. But again, thank you for joining, and thanks again for Miriam and the church. I actually copied my slides to the church. Computer has my slides, and I believe this afternoon they recorded me, so that's available to all of you.